Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason. My suit has a voice. Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or popular movie from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about it in about an hour. However, if this is your first Geek History lesson, it's a little bit different this week. And
That's a fair point.
Why might that be, Jason?
Well, see, sometimes when the big nerdy movies come out, we like to step away from the school for a little bit, have a class discussion about our favorite movies that are coming out, especially when they relate to topics that we talk about in the podcast. Because last week we did the 5 best Spider-Man stories that you should read. It's an excellent podcast. Go check out that episode if you haven't, because if you're really excited about the movie we're about to talk about, those are the perfect books to read.
I will also say, if this is your first lesson, we have a 2-part Peter Parker lesson. We have a Gwen Stacy lesson, a Miles Morales lesson, a Vulture lesson, an Electra lesson. There's lots of episodes you can go back if you need a true Spider-Man Geek History lesson.
All over the iTunes and the Stitcher and the SoundCloud where you can find this lovely, lovely podcast. But today, we're going to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes, sir, we are.
The brand newish movie that is out in theaters. And, of course, as everyone knows, it is a Marvel movie. It was directed by John Watts, who also directed a movie that you and I both like.
Cop Car.
Cop Car. I also want to call it Copland, but that's a Sly
I know,
Stallone
you do that every time.
The screenplay was written by a lot of people: Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daly, John Watts, Christopher Ford, Chris McKenna, and Eric Summers. That is a lot of names on this screenplay.
Many names.
The story was by Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, so apparently they got to do the first draft. And of course, it was based on Spider-Man, created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
Starring Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, and I love that Jon Favreau gets third billing.
I mean, yeah, that seems correct to me.
He is the third biggest part. All right. So if you have not seen Spider-Man Homecoming, we're going to go in-depth, full spoilers. So at this point, if you have not seen Spider-Man Homecoming, you're going to want to turn off this podcast, and you're going to want to come back later. All right, we'll wait for you. Don't worry. Hey, you're back.
Oh, so sweet. Thank you so much for coming back.
Did you stay to the end of the credits? Because there was stuff.
I think we know by now.
There was stuff. Okay. All right. So let's just roughly, Ashley, talk through this movie. And at any point, of course, if you want to stop me, insight, facts. We're going to break down every single part of this movie.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So the movie begins, I think, at a very interesting point. It starts at the Battle of New York. We go back to Avengers #1, and we meet Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, and we learn that he has the giant salvage operation to take apart one of those giant space worms we saw in Avengers.
Yeah, the one that Hulk punches down.
Yeah, but we learn that Tony Stark has created a new department, the Department of Damage Control, and they're actually going to take away the jobs from Michael Keaton and all his working personality tough guys.
Run by Tyne Daly.
Okay, let's talk about this. One, as a Dwayne McDuffie fan, Dwayne McDuffie is the guy who created Damage Control, an amazing series. They're the people that clean up in the Marvel Universe. The Thing worked with them for a while. I like that they're finally in the Marvel Universe. I think it's kind of a neat little retcon that it's been around for a while. I thought this was actually a great introduction to Michael Keaton, to see him as like the working stiff who kind of gets screwed over by the giant superheroes that loom over this universe.
It also continues the trend that Tony Stark is the greatest villain in the Marvel Universe, and he keeps ruining people's lives without even knowing it.
He keeps taking over. Look, Tony, we wanted to pick up the space junk. Why won't you let us pick up the space junk, Tony? Hey,
no.
Oh, hey, oh. So.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of a weird casting choice in this. Tyne Daly, amazing actress.
Wonderful actress.
Shows up. One of the, what was she was the 2 ladies and they were cops. Help me out here. Laverne and Shirley? I don't know.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
She was in a great 70s show where she was a cop. Anyways, Cagney and Lacey, that's what it is. Thank you. I knew I would get it if I thought about it. Anyways, she shows up. She's the head of this department. She's, I guess the idea is that she's the head of Damage Control. And she shows up one other time in the movie. It seems like they cast a major actress in a role that doesn't really pay off.
Right. It makes me wonder if it was promised to her that there would be more focus later.
Do you think it's like a Martin Freeman thing, like with Civil War?
I hope so.
I hope so, too, because she's amazing.
They don't even say her name at any point in the movie.
I don't think so. I don't think they do either, yeah. I think you're right about that.
I don't know if that's something that got cut. That's how you speak. But I think it's a little bit of an oversight. I'm really hoping we see more because, if not, I'm glad Tyne Daly got a paycheck. But
sure.
The role could have been anyone.
It could have been.
And that's a problem in other parts of this movie as well.
Yes.
But I think we'll get to that later.
We will get to that. Okay, so we jump ahead 8 years. And
not the same timeline as the real world, interestingly enough.
No, not enough. Because technically then that means that... it's not quite.
It's only been 5 years since 2012.
Yeah, and so this technically
is
puts it in 2019?
2020.
2020. This
math is hard,
puts
guys.
Spider-Man.
I'm sorry.
I did read a giant article that said actually that Spider-Man Homecoming kind of breaks the timeline of the Marvel
MCU, yeah.
It's kind of true, but I also think you kind of have to ignore it.
Mm-hmm, I agree.
Because there is another point in this movie where Happy Hogan says that Iron Man 1 took place in 2008, which according to the Marvel Cinematic Timeline, that's false.
Yes, it
Iron
is.
Man in their timeline takes place in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
But he says 2008, cementing that movie in 2008, which you're just like, wait a minute. What? No.
Yeah.
No. Okay, anyways, so we get to see Civil War from Peter Parker's vlog, which I actually thought was kind of interesting. And I actually really liked that choice because, of course, Peter Parker would be part of the YouTube generation. He totally would. Mm. And he would be free. I actually really like the joke where he's up late at night and he was like, and then I still Captain America's shield. And and then Happy comes and he's like, there's thin walls, kid.
Yeah. Happy has no patience for him.
I really, really liked Happy's relationship with Peter Parker in this movie a lot. I thought Jon Favreau was really powerful in this movie.
Yeah, you can tell that Jon Favreau, with this and with Chef, really likes acting with younger actors. I don't know if he's a dad in real life. I just don't know that much about Jon Favreau.
I'm pretty certain he is a dad.
But I thought he was very sweet in this, and I think Happy has been a little underrepresented for his importance in the Iron Man mythos, and it's nice to get to see him.
A little bit of that is Jon Favreau's a busy man.
Sure, and a little bit of that is if you're paying RDJ $60 million to show up in a movie, you're going to use him.
Yep.
But I thought it was really nice to highlight him in Spider-Man.
I did too, and I thought he was one of the strong points of this movie. Jon Favreau making the choice to have Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan be the representation of Iron Man for most of this movie, since we couldn't get Robert Downey Jr. in most of this movie, I thought was a strong, powerful choice. And I thought every time Jon Favreau showed up, I was actually really happy to see him. I actually really like Happy Hogan in the comic books too. So
it also keeps this movie from being effectively Iron Man 4, despite the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is the largest person on their first released horrible poster.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we get to see that Peter is basically waiting for the phone call. He never gets a phone call from Tony, and he kind of is, he's like shirking all his responsibilities at school. Like he's quitting band, he's quitting the academic decathlon team, and he's telling everybody, he's like, oh, I'm spending all my time at the Stark internship. And we get what is my favorite sequence in the movie, where he's kind of like wandering around Queens and like not doing anything. And then what I think is actually one of the best Stan Lee cameos ever, where like he's sitting in the window being like, what are you doing, you punk?
Yeah.
This is actually, I think, is my favorite part of the movie, was him just wandering around Queens with nothing to do, because that would be the truth of superheroes. Like superheroes, it would be so impossible to actually run across a crime in New York.
Anywhere. Because most crimes aren't being committed out in the open, as it turns out. My favorite part about that sequence is they use the same corner that The Americans shoots on a lot.
Oh, really? I didn't notice it.
Totally. I'll put it out to you the next time. But I was like, oh, where are the Jennings? They're probably dead.
Well, in this future timeline of 2020, they probably are.
Yeah.
Yes. They probably really are dead.
One of my favorite moments, though, is when he left the note with the bicycle, because he stopped the bicycle thief, and then whoever it belonged to was not there witnessing the crime, which would totally happen.
That bicycle thief could have been riding that thing for 6 blocks.
Yeah.
And then also we get to meet the sandwich maker guy, who I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name either.
Yeah.
A+ on Bodega Cat realness representation, because that is such a New York thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then bringing that around at the end where Peter has to save the cat. I thought was very sweet.
That was really nice. I actually really wanted him to be in the movie a little bit more.
Me too. We should have seen that character a third time.
Yes. So then we get the ATM scene where Peter fights the fake Avengers, like we see in the trailers, in every trailer.
That was a good joke.
And then he comes home and Ned discovers his secret identity and destroys the Death Star, his Lego Death Star, like he was.
Can we do a little pause and talk about Ned for a second?
Sure, talk about Ned.
So I think that the child they got to play Ned was really wonderful.
I don't think he was a child, but sure.
Well, whatever. He was 21, just like Tom Holland is. They're all not teenagers, except I think Abraham from Beasts of No Nation. But I wanted to bring it up because I know that you have some issue with the fact that we called him Ned.
Well, I don't. I do. Ned Leeds is a classic Spider-Man character. I believe, I could be remembering wrong, I think he does become a Spider-Man villain. I could be wrong about that. Whatever. Just let me know.
He probably becomes a goblin.
Let me know on Twitter. Everybody becomes a goblin.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ned is clearly... from his race, from the way he looks, to his weight, to his attitude, to his obsession about Legos, he's Genki.
Yeah.
From Miles Morales' Ultimate Spider-Man.
And you would have rather just called him that and adopted that character into Peter's universe?
Yes, because I think it was a little bit of a, If you're making him Genki, the character of Genki, even to the fact of the Death Star joke is a joke from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah, it is.
It's exactly ripped out from Ultimate Spider-Man.
Google it, because it'll come up.
And I think almost the way he discovers is exactly
It is almost panel for panel, because I've seen that strip.
Yeah. So, yeah, why not call him Genki? I mean, the thing about this movie, which I thought was a strength of it, actually, was that this Peter Parker is basically Ultimate Spider-Man. He is the Brian Michael Bendis Peter Parker. And yeah, like making him Ned Leeds doesn't add anything. So like what his name was is literally meaningless. So call him Genki.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Call him who he is.
Yeah, he's Genki. Call him Genki.
But I thought he was the great of the secondary children. I thought he was the greatest.
Well, yeah, because I will say that was a problem that I had in this movie, that I thought the rest of the kids, especially the ones on the academic team, are kind of meaningless to this picture.
Which if we can derail a little bit more, which I was super bothered by.
Let's not talk about the big reveal yet, but yeah.
Okay, no.
Yeah.
But the really cute little Asian girl is Cindy Moon, who is Silk.
Yep.
And it's great, and I love setting her up, but we only hear her name once. I think we should have lingered on that a little bit more. The boy from Beasts of No Nations should be Miles, because he's actually age appropriate to be Miles, but they call him Abraham, and then both of those characters could have been anyone.
Yep.
They were meaningless, and they added nothing to the plot. So unless they wind up being important later on, it's sort of a wasted casting choice for me.
I really doubt.
And then the girl who played Liz Allen and Zendaya, I'm sorry, I don't know who she is except a Disney star. I love the fact that the two most iconic women that are represented in Peter's life are played by African-American women. I think that's amazing. I think they're both beautiful. And I think they were both not great in this movie. And I was really kind of disappointed by that.
You know who I thought the best kids in this movie were besides
the adults?
Genki/Ned?
Peter?
No, they kept cutting to the video monitor of the inter-school
thing. Betty Brant!
And Betty Brant's
she
there.
Was terrible, but she was supposed to be terrible.
So I like the two kids being like, and now the science...
Yeah.
And they were so awkward. Which I was like, yep, that's exactly right.
I will say, and I should have looked up the actor's name before we started this, I'm really sorry, but the kid who played Flash Thompson is a little actor, he's an adult now, that I've seen sort of bouncing around for a while, and I thought he was great.
He was good.
He had no depth, but he did it well.
Let's talk about this. This is something interesting to consider about this movie. We talked about that we didn't think the kids brought much to the plot, and I 100% agree with you. Besides Ned, I really...
Didn't need any of them.
They didn't really bring any purpose.
Yeah.
Besides, like, oh, love interest, and like, oh, I'm gonna be an asshole to you, like Flash Thompson does in the comics. But think about this: Flash Thompson, who is classically the bully of Spider-Man, is still the bully to Peter, but he's a nerd. He's on the academic decathlon.
I did appreciate that, yes.
So all of his group of friends, the girl that he loves, the kind of cool hipster chick that is Michelle, they're all nerds, which is an interesting choice about the time that this movie is set in.
It is. But it also, if Peter is going to this STEM school, they would have to be. Like, I went to a performing arts high school, so everybody was a band geek, which is cool when you go to a performing arts high school, but it's not cool anywhere else. I thought, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually thought that was a really nice detail.
All right, so then Peter goes to this giant party, and they like the idea that he's going to dress up as Spider-Man and show up and be like, "Hey guys, I'm Spider-Man."
Yeah.
In this super nice house.
Liz Allen lives in a very nice house.
It's a really nice house.
Or I guess she's not. She's just Liz.
Yeah, Liz. But yeah, we don't know whether she's Liz Toomes.
Yeah, which
is
I
something
guess she would be.
She kind of would be, or maybe she's Liz Allen and maybe she's a stepchild. But no, it seems like he is her dad.
Yeah.
Like biological, like the way. But who knows? Anyways, I actually liked that choice because I thought it made Peter be more like a kid, that he would actually consider like hopping into that party, even though it'd be like the worst idea ever.
The worst, yes.
And then he confronts the two prowlers. And we get to see Aaron Davis for the first time.
The two shockers.
Yeah, the two shockers.
You said prowlers.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron Davis is a prowler. And that played by Donald Glover.
Yes.
Nice little beat because Aaron Davis is the prowler in Ultimate Spider-Man, who is the uncle of Miles Morales.
Yay.
And he also mentions that he has a nephew the same age. Although, at the same time, you and I talked about this, Donald Glover kind of just seemed like he walked off the set of Atlanta.
Okay, so I love Donald Glover.
Me too.
I was 100% behind him campaigning to be Peter Parker or Miles Morales. Yeah.
He is responsible for the creation of Miles Morales because Brian Michael Bendis was inspired by that.
He would have been a great Spider-Man. I'm glad that he's been embraced on the animated side. I was glad that he was brought into this movie. He was in like a scene and a half. And really, rolled out of bed from Atlanta, didn't brush his hair, did 2 scenes, and then went back to Atlanta.
Right.
And to me, that's more of a criticism on the structure of the movie.
Yes.
Which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it was a little disappointing to have this really great performer who is iconically known to be tied to Spider-Man and to love the character kind of be wasted in this part. And again, like Tyne Daly, hopefully it pays off later on.
Yeah,
But we can only talk about what we saw in this almost 2.5 hour long movie.
It is funny that mostly I liked the quieter moments in this movie besides the big moments.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about like the ship scene that you see in all the trailers, and then of course the Washington Monument scene, and then on the plane.
Yeah.
My favorite action scene was none of those. My favorite action scene is the one that after he's chasing the two prowlers where he's like running through Queens, because I love it because that's taken from a Peter David Spider-Man storyline where Spider-Man has to go way out into the suburbs and he has nothing to web sling into. Like I love the shot where he runs across the golf course and he shoots the webs and he's like, crap. That's my favorite action scene in this entire movie.
I agree.
So like it's like that and him wandering around Queens. It's like all these tiny moments are my favorite moments in this movie. Like the big, like giant action pieces that they did, I was like, eh.
And maybe they might have been more impressive if this had been the movie that we'd gotten in 2006 or 2008 before. Like we're so saturated with superhero movies now that some of which have better action tentpole scenes than others.
Sure. And at the end of the day, like, there's nothing too unique about any of these action scenes, to be honest with you.
No.
Comparatively. All right, so he finds the shockers. At this time, Adrian Toomes kills the first shocker, and then we find out that the villain of Fargo Season 2 becomes the new shocker. Can't remember his name either.
Hannibal Buress?
So then we get to... No, not Hannibal Buress. Hannibal Buress is the gym coach.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
So then we get into the sequence where they go to Washington, D.C. at the same time that Peter Parker and Ned are exploring the device. And Peter goes to Washington, D.C. specifically to hunt down the Vulture because he gets a tracker on one of the shockers after they come to the school and stuff like that. And he goes in this long sequence where he like rides trucks out into the middle of nowhere. But he does this because he activates his suit. He gets to take off the training wheels protocol.
Yeah.
And his suit comes alive. And we learn that there's like 580 web combinations. The suit is voiced by Jennifer Connelly, starts talking to him, and he names it Karen. And this is something that I didn't like. I didn't like that the Spider-Man suit basically became the Iron Man suit in this thing. I thought it was because we look at it and it's mostly cloth. And unless you want to do something like, it's made of unstable molecules or something like that, I was really like, man, this suit is too technologically advanced, and I don't like it. And I thought Spider-Man leaned on it too much.
I agree. Also because Iron Man is just not a character that I'm super a fan of. So I didn't want Spider-Man to just be Iron Man light, and that's what we did. And we did that inexplicably to replace the spider sense. Now, there are scenes where he definitely anticipates stuff, so it's like soft
in this movie,
still there. But we don't have any exploration of it the way we've had in the past and the way we've had traditionally in the comics. And I think that that's really a missed opportunity and really kind of sad that we just swapped out that detail for a fancier suit, because you knew from the trailers or from if you're just familiar with the structure of these movies that suit is going to be taken away and he's going to be back in the cloth suit that he made.
Yeah.
So showing us all, I don't know. I didn't like it.
I didn't like it either. And I actually, it led to my least favorite sequence in this movie where he fights the Vulture again. By the way, let's talk about this. Before we get to this, my least favorite sequence in the movie, which is where he's trapped in the Department of Damage Control for the entire night. I really did not like that sequence at all. The Vulture, 1, looks cool.
Yeah.
2, Michael Keaton does a fantastic job. And 3, never in my life did I ever think I would walk away from a movie and be like, you know what? The Vulture was cool.
It was cool, yeah.
Because I think he's a stupid comic book villain.
He is. I think, this is another example where they took like the Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
It's not the Iron Spider suit, but I can't think of a better way to describe it. They took the comic book character and they really changed it per the sort of trappings of their universe, and it really worked.
Yeah.
And some of that is Michael Keaton, and Michael Keaton is a wonderful actor. He, again, is a staple of comic book fandom, so it was great to see him here for a number of different fan service reasons. But it is so cool that a character that is as silly as Adrian Toomes can not only be a viable threat, but can be a character that you're looking forward to seeing in coming Spider-Man stories. Like, that's amazing.
I really like that this movie really grounded the Sinister Six. And yes, they are the Sinister Six, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, the Shocker's there, the Vulture's there. We see the Scorpion. I'm very certain I was gonna try to Google it out because I didn't do it. Their little techno guy he's got to be somebody.
Oh,
as well.
yeah.
Did you like that? I actually thought that was the thing that really helped this movie was the grounding. The villains, those seem like real dudes.
I did. I mean, this is basically if they took one of the Marvel Netflix series and made it a movie. Like, to me, it felt, even though Iron Man is in it, it felt more of a piece with something like Daredevil and Luke Cage. And part of that is the setting and how important Queens is to the location. Then it felt like a traditional MCU movie. And I think that's why the villains paid off, because Marvel has their best villains on their television shows.
Yeah.
And I really like their Fix-It guy. I know him from Orange is the New Black. And I was
the actor.
Yeah, I was so happy to see him here. And I thought the ongoing joke about the vacuum seal was really cool, and I thought it actually paid off really, really well. Yes.
Okay, I was correct. When we saw the movie, the guy who is Michael Chemis, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He's called Mason in the movie by Michael Keaton. I did predict. I was like, okay, he's either the Fixer or he's the Tinkerer.
Yeah.
He's the Tinkerer. So they don't call him the Tinkerer, but yeah.
But that's who he is.
To be honest with you, I actually thought, because Sony has been trying to reboot or make their own Sinister Six movie version for the longest time.
For like a decade, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually was like, man, there's no way that can work. There's no way that can work. I'll tell you what. You make a Netflix series starring Michael Keaton showing us the 8 years of them stealing technology with these dudes and make it the Breaking Bad of supervillains, I'm in. And I'm watching every episode.
I agree. I don't think Michael Keaton works for Netflix.
No. But I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
The concept of that is so good that that could have been this is the Sinister Six movie that could work.
They executed it so well.
Yes.
So why not build on it?
So believable. Okay, so again, Spider-Man gets trapped in the department because the Vulture kicks his butt. Because the Vulture has phase through wall technology for some reason. Whatever, I'll just go with it. So Spider-Man gets trapped in the Department of Damage Control, and he basically talks to Karen for the entire night. Karen's voiced by Jennifer Connelly, who is the wife of Paul Bettany Jarvis, which is kind of a nice little touch. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not.
I would say almost certainly they did it on purpose. I want to know if she also recorded her lines from her iPhone like he used to do when he was Jarvis and not the Vision.
Well, see, actually, then I wonder why they didn't make her Friday, who is Iron Man's new AI.
Because Friday's a terrible AI.
Yeah, but...
That's actually... I expected it to be Friday as well, and I was pleasantly surprised that it was not.
Okay, so he gets trapped. The only part of this movie that I like, or that sequence that I like, is I don't like the fact that it's like, oh, this is all his new powers, and this is how it does, and da-da-da-da. I didn't like the fact that... I did like the fact that it was like, oh, here's exposition to show off all his powers.
Yeah.
I did like the fact that he got bored like a kid would and was like, it's only been 37 minutes.
Yeah, I thought that was very funny.
I thought that was very real. But then he gets out, he goes to the Washington Monument.
He gets out really easily.
Yeah, because he tracks Ned, and because he's worried about the bomb. And then, of course, because the bomb gets X-rayed, it goes off in the Washington Monument. Peter climbs the top of the Washington Monument, does this giant action sequence where they all see him. a pretty neat sequence, but this Washington, D.C. sequence could almost completely be excised from the film, and not a single thing would change.
Not could be completely excised from this movie, and nothing would change.
It reminded me, when I walked out of the movie, it really reminded me of the going to Hong Kong in The Dark Knight, which is like, oh, it's a cool sequence for Batman, right? Seeing him.
It is visually stunning.
Visually stunning, but doesn't really move the movie along.
No, but it's because they wanted to capture part of the Chinese market.
Yeah, for Hong Kong.
Yeah, to like pay homage.
I don't know what the thinking of going to DC was. I don't know why they were like, let's go to a different city.
I don't know. Maybe they were like, we've been in New York a lot, and DC is kind of close.
I have a feeling that somebody pitched the idea of climbing up the Washington Monument. And they were like, that's cool.
I mean, look, it was cool, but it served no purpose. Also, when he's at the top trying to break into the teeny tiny little window, I know he like jumps off the top and wings around the helicopter, but she says there's 4 layers of bulletproof glass, and I'm just not convinced he created enough force to have ever broken through that window.
You kind of have to like you kind of have to like comic book logic take that over, because you kind of have to be like, he's stronger than the average bear.
That's true. He does have proportional strength of a spider.
Yeah, which doesn't make sense, but whatever.
Yeah, he would like rip doors off all the time. But I was like, I don't know, man, science.
Yeah. Okay, so he returns to New York and he tracks down Adrian Toomes, who is dropping off the Scorpion suit to Mac Gargan, who is played by the amazing Nacho from Better Call Saul.
That was so cool.
He's a great choice for that part.
Yeah.
And it's on the ferry. And it's this ferry sequence that we've seen in every trailer.
Yeah, it's Staten Island Ferry.
I actually really like the moment. There was a nice little small reveal. Again, all the things I like in this movie are a small reveal, where he's confronting Scorpion. He's watching. Tony Stark calls him. Mm-hmm. And Tony Stark's like, hey, kid, I saw the Washington Monument. Just want to tell you good job. Blah, 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 blah. And then Peter's like, Mr. Stark, I have to call you back. I'm in band practice right now.
Yeah.
And Tony goes, wait a minute. Happy told me a couple months ago you quit band practice, which to me, one, tells me that somewhere, somehow, when Tony is busy tinkering on something, he's playing all of Peter's voicemails and listening to them.
Yes. I also, a big dangling thread for me, as someone who I think I mentioned was in band, they never tell you what Peter played. And I wanted to know.
What do you think he plays?
I think because he's a teenage boy, he probably played a trumpet. But I don't know if he'd be more of like a weird, because the percussionists.
I didn't know if he'd play a clarinet.
Clarinet.
Because he's a nerd. Peter kind of has weird tastes.
I don't know, but percussion is very precise. So I was like, I don't know, maybe percussion.
He'd be an excellent drummer with the spider sense.
Yeah, he'd be great on the xylophone.
So I like that little beat. I like that little beat that Tony figured it out, and that's the reason why Tony shows up.
Yeah.
Then they crack the ferry in half, of course, which seemed a little precise. And then
incredibly precise.
And then we do like kind of a repeat of the Spider-Man 2 beat where he's trying to stop the train and he's trying to and then Iron Man shows up with all his metallic things and pushes the train back together. By the way, I gotta state, I actually really liked the Iron Man armor design in this movie because it's a nice little shout out to Ultimate Spider-Man because it was gray because that's what the way the Ultimate's Iron Man armor was. I'm not usually a big fan of the MCU Iron Man designs because I liked it in the first movie because it looked like the Extremis armor, but since then, they really haven't changed it that much, or it's just like variations of a theme. But I thought this was the first one where we changed it enough to make it different. And I like that since this is basically the Ultimate Spider-Man movie, that it was the Ultimate Iron Man armor.
Can I tell you the thing that I liked about the sequence the best?
Sure. The guy?
There is a tall African-American man. And when it looks like Spider-Man saved the day, he stands up and he's like, woo, Spider-Man! And he like claps his hands. Mm-hmm. And then when Spider-Man like ruins everything and Iron Man saves the day, he stands up again and he's like, woo, Iron Man!
Yeah.
That was my favorite part of the whole sequence. I loved that guy. And I loved like the fair weather fandom there because to me that's also like comic book nerds in a nutshell.
Yeah. And then we get the scene where Tony Stark and Peter Parker finally talk face to face after he's been Spider-Man for a while here. And I actually really liked Tom Holland in this moment was really good because Peter seemed so concerned that somebody was hurt. He was
crushed.
He was visibly upset, which I really appreciated. Well, let's talk about this. I thought Tom Holland nailed the performance in this movie. I think he was amazing. He was a great Peter Parker. I thought he was a great Spider-Man.
Look what classical training and theater experience can do for a young actor.
You know, I think after this movie, I might concede the point that he is the best Spider-Man now.
I really thought he was quite wonderful. And this scene, and then a scene later on, he gets the emotional range that's usually reserved for female characters. You see him crying. You see him visibly upset. And it's really great to see the range that he can play. I think raises his voice a little bit, I think, to seem younger, because he is going to be 22 playing 15 because movies. I think that's a little much from time to time, but I do think he is a tremendous actor. Somebody made a comment that he's going to go on to be a giant movie star, I think, for sure.
I agree with that 100%. I think he's going to have a huge career.
And I really like him as Peter Parker. I do.
And of course, Tony Stark slaps him away, takes away the suit. And we get a little quiet. We get a little quiet montage in a Spider-Man movie. He helps Ganke. Yes, he's Ganke. Build the Death Star. That
was so sweet.
He asked Liz Allen to the homecoming dance. And
she's so tall too. That girl.
she is tall. And we get possibly the best Easter egg in the entire movie.
What is that, Jason?
And it's one I bet a lot of people missed. So this actor who is Kenneth Choi, he shows up. He's Peter Parker's principal, and he tells Parker to stop, and he pulls him, and he's like, "You've been missing class, and you've been bad boy." And we see this shot from outside his office, and we can see that he has a picture on his cabinet of file cabinet drawers, whatever you want to call it, black and white picture, and the picture is of Jim Morita. From Captain America, the First Avenger, also played by Kenneth Choi.
Yes.
This is a Captain America, the First Avenger shout out. Now, there's an idea here. Is he the son? Is he the grandson? You said Variety confirmed that he is the grandson?
Yes.
There's also another Easter egg in here that, depending on the debate, a lot of people online think that this might be Peggy Carter's grandson.
Yes, 10 out of 10 acceptable.
Because it has been said, it was revealed in one of the other movies that Peggy married somebody that Captain America saved. And the only people that we've seen from that time period that Captain America saved were the Howling Commandos. We know that Peggy had a relationship with them. And also, this guy being in Queens, since Morita was from Fresno.
Yeah.
Does lend credence to maybe this is a member of the Carter family. I don't think we get his last name.
I don't think so. Excuse me. I don't think so either. But even if we did, it wouldn't be Carter.
Well, no, it would be Morita.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I don't. What do you think? Do you think this is Peggy Carter's grandson?
I don't know if I think it's. It's obviously Captain Morita, whatever his
Jim
rank
Morita.
Is. It's definitely his. I really like the idea that it is Peggy's grandson. And I don't think that we're ever going to get any confirmation of that, but this is proof enough for me. Headcanon accepted.
I actually really like this character from Howling Commandos.
So
I really liked him. This actor also played Judge Ito on the People vs. O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
He was great there. I really like this actor. I'm with you. I accept this.
Yeah.
This is Peggy Carter's grandson.
I love it.
And until I'm disproven, this is headcanon accepted. Because I like the idea that the man that Peggy chooses is somebody else who had to fight his way through an occupation that wouldn't have been accepting of his nationality.
Exactly. Yeah. Even though he's like, I was born in America.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. I also like the idea that Peggy's grandson goes on to mentor a superhero.
I do too.
Even if he doesn't know that he's Spider-Man. I just like the sort of meta narrative of that an awful lot.
I really like that too. Yeah. So until I'm proven wrong, yes.
Principal Morita.
Principal Morita is the grandson of Peggy Carter.
Done.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Okay, so then we get the best reveal of the movie, a reveal that I did not see coming.
I agree.
But really slapped me across the face and brought a lot to this movie. Peter, who I sometimes call Peggy.
That's his drag is Peggy Parker.
Have you seen his lip sync battle, Tom Holland's lip sync battle?
I have seen nobody's lip sync battle.
Go Google Tom Holland's lip sync battle. It involves drag.
Great. He just shot to the top of my favorite Spider-Man list.
So Peter Parker, sometimes called Peggy Parker, goes over to the house of Liz Allen and Adrian Toomes, Michael Keaton answers the door, revealing that he is the father of Liz Allen. And wow.
I'll tell you what I super liked about this scene is that Michael Keaton does such a flip with this character. Like, he's just like goofy dad guy. Like, there's nothing that gives away that he is essentially a supervillain.
Like, especially the deliberate choice of him holding a knife and being like, "Are you nervous, Pete?"
Yeah,
like, you can tell like that's such a dad thing to do.
Yeah.
You know. Also, it does something very strong, and again, cementing that this is the ultimate Spider-Man version of the character, because in the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book universe, Norman Osborn knowing who Peter Parker is such a big part of that character, and having the dad relationship. There's all these scenes where, like, you know, the dad and the son know exactly who each other, but the friend doesn't.
Yeah.
And that makes Adrian Toomes the Norman Osborn of this universe.
Yes, and I think we get a scene at the end that sort of cements that as well.
Oh, really cements that.
I also really like this scene in the Toomes / maybe Allen household because they feel like a real family.
They do.
And I think we don't get that with May and Peter, which I'll talk about later. But I really liked their whole scene with the mom and
Once
the
we get to the very end, we'll talk about Aunt May as a problem.
Sure.
Or not as a problem, but as a whole.
Yeah.
I also really like that Peter couldn't get over it. Like, Peter couldn't. But
teenagers, I'm sorry to all of our teenage listeners, teenagers are like that. You focus on something and you cannot move past it.
You can't get past that at all. No, 100%. So Adrian then takes them to the dance, and over the course of the ride, he figures out that Peter is Spider-Man. I thought that was a little
the world's greatest driving detective.
It was a little too convenient.
Yeah, but we needed to move the plot along at that point.
Exactly, and I really liked the scene where Adrian threatened Peter with the gun.
With a firearm? Yeah,
with a gun. And then also, I like that he kind of admired him. He was like, "I admire you. Like, you're like me. I can see why Liz likes you and stuff like that."
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm going to give you a pass. Now go get in there and show my daughter a good time."
Everybody gets one.
Yeah, I really admired that. That again, reaching back to that Norman Osborn relationship. Peter goes in there. He's literally in the dance for 30 seconds.
And considering the movie's called SpiderMan Homecoming, we could have spent maybe 50 seconds there.
Yeah.
Not that I care because I don't like dances.
Let's talk about this a little bit. I don't like the title.
The title to me is, I'm going to say this politely, is a real shot across the bow at Marvel. It is
You mean Marvel to Sony?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is the equivalent of Marvel flipping the bird to Sony and being like, "We got it now. It's what everybody wants."
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, I'm kidding. It's a dance. Ha 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 ha.
I agree.
And then the fact that we're at the dance for like less than 2 minutes just proves that even more. It's a dumb title.
I agree. I kind of understand why maybe they wouldn't want to call it like the Spectacular Spider-Man, because that would lean towards the Amazing Spider-Man that Sony just did.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what, I have two titles that I think, actually I have three titles that I think could have worked that would have, I think, made enough of a difference.
Tell me.
Well, one, why not just call it Ultimate Spider-Man?
Agreed.
Because it is Ultimate Spider-Man, and he has the suit. It kind of leads towards that. Two, why not just call it Peter Parker Spider-Man?
Like the new book that Marvel just launched.
Well, there's a bunch of... No, the new one is Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh, I thought Peter Parker Spider-Man.
No.
Whatever.
Peter Parker Spider-Man is also a classic Spider-Man title. The one that I would have picked, though, which is also a comic book title, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Especially since he left the notes.
Also, a real missed opportunity to call it SpiderMan Homecoming and not just like take a picture of Peter in a dress. I thought it would have been so, when they first announced that, I was like, I want the poster to be Peter like in a prom dress. It would have been so funny.
I just think if you're going to call it Spider-Man Homecoming, I just think that the homecoming dance should have been more involved. Like maybe the Sinister Six is stealing something from the school.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the idea...
I'm glad we didn't, because it was dumb.
Or maybe it's the idea that the villains attack the school during the homecoming dance.
Yeah.
Like to call it homecoming, it's almost like if Captain America Civil War had instead been called Captain America Peggy Carter's Funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, right? Because Peggy Carter's Funeral has very little to do with the plot of that movie.
It actually mostly sets up that Cap was going to kiss Agent 13.
Right? Well, and that's about as much as this homecoming dance has to do with the Spider-Man movie.
No, totally, completely.
So, or call it Spider-Man : the Sinister Six.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Like, there are so many better titles for this movie.
The best part about the homecoming dance is when Ned has to leave to go be the man in the chair, which doesn't even take place at the dance. It's in the computer lab.
That is a really good part of the movie. Okay, so then we get a scene where Spider-Man in his original costume, the hoodie costume, very Scarlet Spider influenced costume. He tracks down Toomes. He goes into the warehouse. They have a scene, of course, where they talk, and then Michael Keaton outsmarts him and has the whole building crush on him. And I think we got a really great scene where Tom Holland can't get out of the rubble. Very the very classic. I think it's Spider-Man 41, where
33.
Is it 33? Yeah, where that's classic cover where he's trapped underneath all this machinery and he has to lift it up for Aunt May. I really liked that beat. I'm a little disappointed by that beat, because that's where I expected our reveal of Uncle Ben to happen.
Yes. Okay. I have so many thoughts about this scene. First of all, I thought Tom Holland was really wonderful in it. I believed that he was scared.
I love that he started crying.
Yeah, and it made me, because that's what you would do. Yeah. Anyone. I don't care who you are. Yeah. Tom Holland's great. It should have gone on longer.
I agree.
It should have had maybe another minute tops, but it needed a little bit more breathing room. And then when he's looking at the reflection of the mask, which okay.
No, I like that. It's a good shot.
Guess.
It's a good shot.
Hearing Tony Stark's words to me was the wrong choice. We should have seen, if not only heard
of Uncle
Ben. And the fact that Uncle Ben isn't even name checked,
not even mentioned
at any point throughout this movie, I think is really problematic.
I do think this movie goes out of its way.
It was so close to a perfect scene.
This movie goes out of its way to avoid Ben, and I get it. Does. And I get it. You don't want to do the origin because we've seen it twice, but I think you can mention Uncle Ben.
He's incredibly important.
Yes, he's so important to Spider-Man. It would be like a Batman movie never mentioning Alfred.
Yes, exactly.
You would be like, wait a minute, this is a little weird.
Yeah, and I don't know if we needed to see him. Maybe we didn't. But we should have definitely mentioned him and heard him.
I just think this is going to fit in a little bit to our Geek History Lesson Extra, which you can listen to on Patreon, patreon.com/Jawiin. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Spider-Man movie. This episode today, we're going to talk about who should the MCU cast as Uncle Ben. That's our topic for Geek History Lesson. You can only listen to it on Patreon, and every little bit you give over there helps support this podcast and helps keep it free entertainment for you guys. And we thank you guys for everyone over there that does that. Patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. But anyways, I think that if you would have seen a hand come down in front of his face and then the camera flips and Ben says the thing to get up, especially if you cast that part right, it would have been a tear-inducing moment. You're like, that's who Uncle Ben is? Wow.
I would have cried because I didn't cry in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would have been so, you would have been like, oh my God, that's the perfect moment to reveal Uncle Ben.
And I just read, I just started Ultimate Spider-Man for the first time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jason. And in that incarnation, he's kind of more of a hippie and he's got a ponytail. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, where's ponytail Uncle Ben right now?
Okay, so he gets out of it. And then we go into this giant thing where there's a plane that's leaving Avengers Tower, because I guess Avengers Tower is closing down.
It's moving day.
Which is weird why moving day is now, because they've been in that facility
for 3 years.
Since Age of Ultron. Which is weird. Anyways, and then the plane has weird cloaking device.
Well, it's the thing that the X-Jet is supposed to have, the reflective panels, right?
It reminded me a little bit too much of Die Another Day, the bad Pierce Brosnan.
It reminded me too much of a disco ball.
Yeah. So Spider-Man follows the Vulture up there. They have this giant fight on the plane. There's a point where Spider-Man webs up a jet engine, and the jet engine falls off somewhere in Brooklyn,
murdering thousands of people,
murdering an entire building of people that's not mentioned. And then the plane crashes on Coney Island. And
also murdering several people. It takes down the Tilt-A-Whirl and a couple other pretty big fixtures.
Well, that one I'm willing to give them a pass on that one, because it lands mostly on the beach.
It does take out 2 rides.
So I'm willing to give them a pass on that.
All
right. Because we also don't know how late it is.
Man, Coney Island always got people on it.
Oh, really? Okay, I don't know.
It's not open, but there's people there all the time.
I've never been to Coney Island. So, and then it's interesting because Adrian tries to fly off with the bomb devices that we set up earlier. He just tries to leave. I also like the moment that there's the Iron Man suit from Iron Man 3 is in that plane when you see Adrian kind of walking around and stuff like that. I really dug that scene, and then he blows up. and Peter wanders through the fire to save him. So we don't kill, thank God, Marvel, we don't kill one of our best villains.
And we don't waste an incredible casting choice. You finally learned the lesson that Thor taught you 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Michael Keaton in this part is so incredible that it would be a shame not to see him in the sequel.
I can't believe that when he flopped down, he was still alive. I was like, oh, he's going to be dead too.
I was surprised they left him alive, especially since he knew the identity.
Yeah.
But I like the choice that they left him alive. So then we get this thing where there's a funny scene where Happy and Peter are in the bathroom at the high school, and this kid is like overhearing their conversation about Spider-Man.
That kid is like an actual teenager too. I appreciated how awkward that child was.
And I also like the joke that he was like, Mr. Stark wants to see you, and Peter's like, is he here too?
Yeah. If this were produced by a different studio, there would have been a couple really good swear words in this scene.
Yeah. So then Happy takes Peter, drives him up to the Avengers facility, which I don't know what it's called.
I have feelings about this scene.
About the drive?
No, about when they get there.
Okay, so when they get there, what are your feelings?
So Tony Stark comes out and is like, you're going to be an Avenger, dude. We got a room for you. You're going to be beside Vision. It's weird.
Suit.
He comes through the walls. Here's a really cool Jason likes it. It looks like Ben Reilly suit.
Well, don't spoil my moment. I was going to talk about that.
Sorry. And then Peter's like, nah, man. Sony won't lend me out to Marvel for that many movies, so I gotta go back to Queens.
that is completely that is actually completely incorrect.
To me, that's exactly what it's smacked up, because there's no way that this, to me, in my opinion, and it's not wrong because it's an opinion.
Sure.
There's no way that this Peter Parker doesn't sign up immediately. Now, I could see having another movie where he decides he wants to go back and be like Spider-Man of the Burrow, but like, no way. No way. I thought the scene was very silly and not necessary.
Well, the thing I was coming at, that I was correcting you on was actually the fact that the Sony deal is already solidified. Spider-Man is going to be in the next 2 Avengers movies.
No, I know that. But we don't know if the next solo Spider-Man movie is going to be made by Marvel.
No, it is. It's already been confirmed. Spider-Man right now is in a 5-movie deal with Marvel and Sony. The fact is,
I don't know. To me, it just smacked of like Sony said no to this.
No, that's not. It's because what it is that there's a 5-movie deal right now. The 5-movie deal covers Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers Infinity War, New Avengers, Spider-Man Homecoming 2, and then a 5th movie that they have not
announced yet.
Which everybody actually thinks is Spider-Man Homecoming 3, because Tom Holland during the press conference said that
he signed for 3 solo Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, he said he called it a trilogy, which everybody was like, what?
Yeah.
Spider-Man is in the next 2 Avengers movies, and Kevin Feige has actually said that Spider-Man Homecoming 2 sets off Marvel Phase 4.
I just thought this scene where it was like the climax of Mad Max, where it's like, we drove all the way out here and now we're just going to turn around and go back, was like stupid and a waste. It was just because we promised RDJ this many scenes.
I agree with you. It is a little bit, to me, it's a little bit of a coin toss about whether this Peter says no to that. But I will give it to this movie because I do feel like we had enough scenes that it does help complete the movie if he doesn't join the Avengers. But I do agree that there is a lot of setup in the beginning of the movie that you're like, oh, he would say yes to this in a heartbeat.
He wants to be an Avenger so bad.
Yeah. But my thing is that I think if him realizing, I think the reveal of Adrian might affect him more than you think. Of the idea that if you look at Adrian Toomes as sort of the evil Tony Stark of this movie, and again, it's like we have two. It's a fight of 2 father figures, right? And Adrian at one point in the movie says, like, "You're nothing like Stark. You're more like me. Like we know our community."
I mean, it's true.
Stark and Adrian says some things that I think if you think about it, does affect Peter a little bit more than we think. Adrian says this line to him that he's like, Stark is never going to care about you.
I guess the way I look at it is pretty much nobody cares about Peter except for Ned. So
sure,
why wouldn't he just leave?
100% truth. But I'm willing. I do agree with your point that I don't think they set up the change as much as they should have. But for this movie and to make the story work, I'm willing to give it to him. Now, there was one moment in this movie that really got me more than any other movie, and I don't know why. I think it's because it tapped into my childhood comic book reveal. when Tony said, like, you're going to join the Avengers, and they like the music swelled up, and then he revealed the suit, and the suit was this weird Iron Spider, Ben Reilly Spider-Man costume. That's the closest, and this is so stupid, and I reveal this on a national podcast. I don't care.
Stupid.
I got so
international. We got listeners overseas.
We do have internet. We have a lot of listeners in Australia, which I think is so awesome. It's so cool.
If anyone wants to put us up, we'd love to come visit.
We will gladly come do a Geek History Lesson Con in Australia anytime. I got close to tears. I really did. And the reason why? Because if you look at that costume, it is the Ben Reilly when he actually became Spider-Man costume, because the spider symbol is like the entire length of the torso, and it goes over his shoulders, just like the Ben Reilly one. But it has like tinges of gold, like it lined it with gold, which I thought was a weird choice, but whatever.
It was an Iron Spider callback.
It was an Iron Spider, but it looked more like the Ben Reilly Spider-Man costume than any other costume. And I think the reason why I got so close to teary was simply for the fact that I never in my life thought I would ever see the Ben Reilly costume on screen.
Oh, I fully expect to see Ben Reilly on screen in the...
you think they're going to do Clone Saga?
I'll tell you I don't know if they're going to do Clone Saga. I mean, a version of it. I'll tell you why. Here's a free thing that Ashley's been thinking about.
Free? You normally charge?
No, but I feel like this might be good extra material. But here you go. So I think because Sony is so obsessively building their Spider-Man universe without a Spider-Man...
Yeah.
They're going to find some kid who looks enough like Tom Holland and make him Ben Reilly so that they can have a Peter Parker Spider-Man.
So you think that there might be a thing where Sony makes a movie that might be called Scarlet Spider?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
And it's a
so
Spider-Man
that they
clone.
can have Peter Parker without having Peter Parker. Because that character's tied up with a lot of weird Marvel stuff. There's restrictions on what Sony can do with him. And that's a way to have Peter Parker without Peter Parker.
That storyline is pretty reviled. I don't know. I mean, I would go see that movie in a heartbeat, but...
you don't call it the Clone Saga, though.
No, you call it Scarlet Spider. Is what you call it. I don't know.
I think there's wiggle room for Ben Reilly to...
Maybe. To be honest with you, I could see Marvel doing that. If Marvel gets Spider-Man fully, I could see Marvel going deep.
Love
and just being like, we're doing Clone Saga.
Make him Silk's boyfriend. That's all I want out of the world. Do you want to talk about the two stingers?
All right, well, let's talk about, okay, so we get to see Pepper Potts again, which I actually really liked. We get a nice little scene between Happy and Pepper and Peter and Tony, which really reminded me of Iron Man 1, which I think I enjoyed that Iron Man scene more so than Iron Man 2 and 3. And then he gets his spider suit back. We got to talk about this one person that we haven't mentioned the entire time. We got to talk about Aunt May, because the last scene of the movie is Peter has his suit on. Aunt May sees him and goes, what the? And it cuts. They do it very similar to Iron Man 1, where he goes, I am Iron Man, and it cuts.
They do it very similar to the end of Age of Ultron, where he says Avengers and doesn't say something.
Yeah. Ashley, let's talk about... I'm going to state this right now, everybody. I did like that reveal, because I actually expected that reveal to come earlier in the movie. I was surprised they held it that long. I did not like Marissa Tomei as Aunt May.
So... I think this is a deeply flawed movie.
Okay.
I think there are big problems with it.
Okay, let's talk about Aunt May right now.
She is one of the biggest ones.
Okay, cool.
I like Marissa Tomei. I like Aunt May.
She's a great actress.
I don't think they should be one and the same.
I agree.
And some of this comes down to preference. And again, this is my opinion. So if people loved it and they loved her, awesome. I hope you did. My preferred Aunt May, which I think we've spoken about on the podcast before, is probably closer to the Ultimate version.
Yes.
A little older, but not super old.
She's a silver fox.
Exactly. But the fact that there are 5 scenes where people talk about how they want to have sex with Aunt May, I think is troubling. I think the fact that her and Peter have no real bond and no real chemistry is troubling.
It's also
I think the fact that she's kind of dumb is troubling.
It's also very troubling, too, and we talked about this. We were talking about the Washington, D.C. scenes, that you can literally cut out every Aunt May scene.
And it doesn't matter.
And the plot of this movie does not change. That's troubling.
Yes, it is.
In any terms of writing, that's very troubling.
Yeah.
And that means that her character is basically meaningless. And for a Spider-Man movie, that sucks.
Right. And, I made a joke earlier that Ned's the only one who seems like he cares about Peter, because it's true. Like, his connection with Aunt May is pretty much null and void.
Yeah.
For the woman who's effectively his mother figure.
Who is his mother.
She's there. She's they sort of try to lay it on in the scene where he's upset and she's holding him against her stomach, which is a film trope that I hate, because nobody holds another human being like that ever. But again, like there's no resolve. She doesn't say anything profound. There's no real connection there. It's a lot of telling and not showing, and it's really sad.
It is because Aunt May, especially if you read Ultimate Spider-Man, is such a powerful character.
She's so important.
She's so important. She is his mom.
In the pantheon of comic book characters, like forget female characters, forget supporting characters, like she is iconic. And she's done a disservice in this movie.
Everything Spider-Man does is for
her.
May.
Yeah.
And like this movie doesn't tap that at all.
I will say though, in a sweeping statement, I think all of the female characters are done a disservice in this movie.
Well, let's talk about it as we talk about it. And again, like anybody, before we get any crazy internet comments or whatever, again, it's the idea of you can be critical of something and still like it because I like this movie.
Yes.
But I do think this movie has some problems.
Yeah.
But every movie has problems. It's very true. It's the thing like we were talking about Wonder Woman. Like the Ares fight at the end is a little problematic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the 2 end credit scenes, and then let's talk about the movie in general. Okay. So the end credit scenes is we get to see Adrian Toomes in prison talking to Mac Gargan, and you find out that Adrian knows the identity of Spider-Man. He's not telling anybody else.
That was a cool scene.
And then the Captain America fitness video, we're talking about patience, which I actually really laughed at.
I mean, I laughed at it, but it was useless.
Well, sure.
It should have been. I mean, to me, that was something they cut out of the gag reel.
Yeah,
or the blooper reel.
It's exactly what it was. Which is what more of the Marvel after credit scenes have become. They've
which
become,
I don't like because they
scenes.
used to be
meaningful.
They used to further the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to overall in this movie. Ashley, I want to say a little thing that I noticed that I thought about the last couple days since I've seen this movie. This is very much a Spider-Man movie, and this is very much a Spider-Man fighting crime movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, for the movie that was billed as the high school movie,
it is not. You could cut all the high school stuff.
Peter spends more time in the Spider-Man suit than he does as Peter Parker, mm-hmm. which I think is very interesting, and I think is a little bit of, you can tell the Marvel Studios model being like action, 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 action. But though at the same time, this is a very spidery movie. Like Tom Holland does a great job, and I think the Vulture is really good in this
mm-hmm.
movie. I just think that there are. And it's something that you said. I'm going to kind of steal a little bit from you. When the credits for the written by came up, and there were six writers in this thing, the more and more I think about this movie, it is you and you're the one that made this point. It's very correct.
Mm-hmm.
That you can kind of tell that this movie is very patchwork.
Yeah, I said earlier, I think it's deeply flawed. I think structurally this movie is Frankenstein together from probably upwards of 10 drafts.
What do you think is the biggest problem with the structure?
Right. So my main problem is that there are 3 huge, momentous
set pieces.
Action set pieces. We have the scene in DC, we have the boat, we have the plane.
Yep.
Frankly, I have no use for the plane scene because he'd be dead.
And 2 of them are in the same act.
Exactly. Yeah, they bookend the second act.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you can kind of cut the plane scene because I think it's ridiculous.
It's a little bit too. It seems
too big for this
Spider-Man.
Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's a street level character, and to have him being like in the stratosphere is a little weird.
But so it's not even that you can't have 3 fights in a movie. Like I love me a good fight, but these set pieces are so big. These are like
they're momentous.
These are climax of the story. Everything is downhill from here, and we're wrapping up. And we get it 3 times, which for me, by the time the boat scene came around, I was like, is this movie over yet?
Mm-hmm.
Because they trick your brain into what you're used to seeing, particularly from Marvel movies. And I think that they were 3 ideas that for some reason we were too precious to cut when we cut everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that manner, it's deeply flawed. The movie's almost 2.5 hours long. Wonder Woman is less than 2 hours, and I think a much better movie for it.
Let me. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I think a perfect movie is in there, and I think it needs shaving down.
I agree with you. I think you could easily cut 15 minutes from this movie. I was going to bring up a counterpoint, like to go back to another Spider-Man movie, because I think we should stop because it's not about a DC versus Marvel thing. Because I just
brought up because we recently reviewed Wonder Woman.
Totally.
And I thought Wonder Woman was a better movie.
Yeah, totally. I do agree with that. I think Wonder Woman is a better movie than this. But let's compare this to another Spider-Man movie.
Sure, absolutely.
I was thinking about Spider-Man 2 simply for the fact that the boat scene really reminds me of
the train scene.
The train scene, of course. And I was thinking about Spider-Man 2. The biggest problem you were talking about with the weighing down the acts. There are 3 possibly climax ending movie sequences in this. There's Washington Monument, the boat, and the plane. The Washington Monument one to me is the one that upsets the scales because
the most, yes.
Because you could put the plane. Let's compare it to Spider-Man 2. The plane sequence is the final battle in the dock of Spider-Man 2, where Dr. Octopus is opening the portal, right? The boat is the train, which happens they both happen at almost the exact same point of the movie.
Yeah.
The difference is that Spider-Man 2 doesn't have a sequence that is the Washington Monument at that point of the movie. What Spider-Man 2 has is they have the scene where Doc Ock and Spider-Man meet for the very first time. It's in the bank.
Yeah.
And all it is that Doc Ock's in the bank.
It's a pretty simple fight.
Spider-Man shows up. Doc Ock takes Aunt May, crawls up the building, throws Aunt May, and then escapes.
Yeah.
It's literally 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
Whereas the Washington Monument sequence is a good 10 minutes.
It is lengthy.
So I think that's the difference, and I think that's what unevens the movie.
Yeah, I just think the way the movie was cut together and the way the script, I just think it's deeply flawed. I also want to talk about Zendaya.
Let's talk about MJ finally.
So she's this I'm trying not to swear. She's this giant mess of
She's a pain
character.
in the ass. She's a pain in the ass.
Who's not nice, not interesting, not friendly, can't deliver a line as if she didn't just read it off the page. And then in the end, we reveal that she's MJ, but her name is Michelle. So she's Mary Jane, but she's not Mary Jane.
She's not Mary Jane. She's MJ. She's MJ, which is a different version.
And look, she's the archetypal weird loner girl, and I was that in high school, and I was it just felt like every bad stereotype about who that girl is supposed to be executed poorly. They do give her a really interesting line right outside the Washington Monument where she's like, I don't want to climb a giant monument to slavery.
That was built by slaves.
Yeah, I was like, that's interesting. And that's the peak of her character. And to set this character up as, the analog in this universe for one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time, who's supposed to be the love of Peter's life when
the Lois Lane
barely seems to tolerate him and then flips him off at the dance. First of all, she wouldn't have gone to the dance. I just think all the female characters in this movie were really poorly executed, and she, even more than Aunt May, she exemplifies that for me in this movie, and I'm sad because I love the idea Ray Spender, it doesn't matter, who cares? Yeah. I think she's she looks good, whatever. I just thought everything about it was really bad.
I think she's the personification of what we were talking about with the high school kids. That the high school kids, besides Ned/Genki, who should be called Genki, they don't really help the story.
They don't matter.
They really don't matter. But that is a thing that I brought up to you, that has become the Marvel formula. If you look at the Marvel formula is very much about hero, villain, nobody else matters.
And you can tell when you cast, weaker or less seasoned actors. You can tell it more because let's do another Marvel comparison. In Doctor Strange,
yes,
Wong is a pretty useless character.
Yes.
But Benedict, what's his last name?
Cumberbatch.
No. The guy who plays
Benedict Wong.
Oh, right.
Or Benedict Ching or Chang? I don't know.
I think it's Benedict Wong, but now I think I'm mistaking it.
I'm going to look it up. I'm sorry. I think he is Benedict Wong, and he's Wong.
I'm so sorry, but he is so wonderful.
We apologize to all the Benedict Wong fans out there. We're going to look up his name.
Yeah. Oh, man. He is so wonderful that he transcends what could have been a nothing part as just this weird librarian guy.
So does Tilda Swinton, I think, is the Ancient One.
I would say so, despite her problematic casting, whereas I don't think Zendaya is at a place yet where she can do that. So the character comes off.
His name is Benedict Wong.
Okay, good. I was confused because I was like, is that because it's a character name?
Well, because he's playing Wong, and he's playing... sorry, apologies.
I'm sorry, I love you. Please be my friend.
He's actually a really good actor. I love him.
He's great in The Martian.
He's great in Marco Polo.
But yeah, so I think that when you have actors who are not as seasoned and who are not maybe used to having to bring as much to a more loosely written character, it stands out more, which is too bad because we have seen examples like in Doctor Strange where it's done better.
Yeah. 100%. All right, let's move into the rating of this movie because we're running a little bit long. Let's go into the rating, Ashley, based on a scale of 1 to 5 thwips. Because that's what the noise that Spider-Man makes when he shoots his webs.
Yes.
Ashley, what would you give SpiderMan Homecoming?
I would give SpiderMan Homecoming 3.5 thwips. I think it is a solid B as a superhero movie and as a Marvel movie. I think it is the best Peter Parker movie that we've ever had. I think that Tom Holland is really, really wonderful in it. I think that Michael Keaton brings a lot of dynamicity, brings a really dynamic performance to a character that I had no idea I would ever have any interest in. But I think the framework that they're working in is problematic. It's my favorite Peter Parker movie. So yeah, I'm going to give it 3.5 thwips out of a potential 5 thwips, colored differently depending on what Marvel universe it is in. Jason, do you have any feelings about how you would like to rate SpiderMan Homecoming?
I'm going to give it the exact same rating as you.
Yeah. That's a good rating, 3.5.
I'm going to give it a 3.5 because I do think it is... Oh,
and I didn't say that I liked Ned a lot. Even though he should be called Genki, I thought he was really cute.
I think it is... I think it is the second best Spider-Man movie that's ever been made. I think Spider-Man 2 is much better. And I think because this Spider-Man movie, for me, forgets the heart. And that, to me, is very much Peter Parker. That's Spider-Man to me. And I think that's the reason why I liked all the quiet moments better than the big moments, because the quiet moments had the heart in it. And that's why I really, really liked it a lot. Overall, I think this is a fun movie. I think this is a great introduction for Spider-Man into the MCU. If this is the standard of Spider-Man movies going forward, I think they're going to do nothing but get better. Hopefully use less screenwriters next time.
And I hope they pay off because they've seeded some interesting stuff here, and I hope it pays off.
They've created a really interesting universe with basically making the Sinister Six, that there's an interesting kind of world here with Adrian Toomes being the Vulture here and his weird Norman Osborn. I enjoyed it. I do want to see it again.
So do I.
I really do. But it has some, it's mainly in the structure. It's structure of this, and overall plot is where the problem is. So 3.5, it's a really fun time. I actually really enjoyed it. It's my favorite Marvel movie of the year.
Oh yeah. I was like, yeah. I would definitely agree with that.
I did like it better than Guardians 2, so I'll go to that. All right, so we mentioned really quickly that we're going to have a patreon.com Geek History Lesson Extra, Who Should Play Uncle Ben? But before we close out the podcast, Ashley, we want to add another member to the Geek History Lesson Honor Club. And how can they join the Geek History Lesson Honor Club?
You can join the Geek History Lesson Honor Roll by heading on over to iTunes and giving us a 5-star review. Doing that helps other people find us, helps our rankings on the iTunes charts, and it lets us know how much you appreciate everything that we do here at the Mind University.
This one comes from Knizzle, with a 1 for the I.
Awesome.
And they say, I've been listening to Geek History Lesson for about a year now, and I have to say, Jason and Ashley do their homework. They know their stuff, and they don't pretend to know the things that they aren't sure of, which is rare. Ashley is really funny, witty, super smart, and really well-spoken with an excellent vocabulary. Well done, the vocabulary, Ashley.
Oh, thank you.
Jason is simply a savant. The things he knows about comics is shockingly impressive. Just when I think he knows everything, he pulls out something new, and I say to myself, and sometimes out loud on the train to work in New York City, how does he know that?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Thank you, Knizzle, and welcome to the Geek History Lesson Honor Club.
If you're coming to New York Comic Con, say hi.
All right, Ashley, if they want to suggest future lessons for Geek History Lesson, where can they do that?
You can do that on Twitter at GHL Podcast, at Facebook.com/Geek History Lesson, and at GeekHistoryLesson.com. There's a bunch of ways to contact us in all of those places.
And you can find us on Twitter. For me, I'm at Jawiin, Jawiin. Ashley is at Ashley V. Robinson, and the podcast is at GHL Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to our review of Spider-Man Homecoming. I am Jason. My suit will never be named Karen Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson, and Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class?
Spider-Pewter, there was too much Spider-Pewter.